Hi, I'm Bron Williams. This is my colleague Tamilo, and we are here with our Flux Foreplay 15-minute conversations where we chat to people who have interesting ideas about the future and our place in it. And today our guest is John Wilshire. And John, to start with, can you please tell us about the art of noticing things, the art of seeing things that are right in front of you, but really seeing them?
Really seeing things. So thank you so much. We notice things all the time. And this is it, like you would just be walking down streets or sort of like sitting in your office or just like scanning the website for news or whatever else, and you'll pick up things and so on. It's only really when you start developing a habit for going, I noticed a thing, that suddenly you can start to unlock the power of it. So there's the initial noticing, and then there's the thinking about what a thing is. So one of the tools we have for noticing things is something called an obliquoscope. So it's essentially something I started off using on a futures course called Innovation and Future Thinking in Barcelona. And essentially, it was just a way of taking some of the questions my brilliant friend Natalie Kane from the V&A brought to the course. And I just wanted to show students how to use a laser cutter. So I said, I took some of Natalie's questions and put them on a frame like this and said, so just point this at things and say, what is this? Where does it come from? Why does it exist? Who made it? What else does it do? And suddenly just an unlocking that power of sort of like making people focus on a thing but deepen their relationship with it. You get this, you unlock people in a way. They suddenly go, I might not know, but I bet I could find out. I don't know who made it, or I don't know where the material's from, or I don't know how many there are, or I don't know if it's perceived as a good thing or a bad thing. But suddenly the questions naturally come to people, it seems. So just with the noticing is centered on we're all human, we're all brilliant, and we can all do this naturally. It's just a kind of what's the simplest little step you can use to unlock that in people.
You mentioned questions. I just wanted to ask you what kind of questions are on that I'm going to call it a thingamajig. You call it an
I call it so I call it an obliquoscope. So
obliquoscope.
after the economist John Kay's book Obliquity.
Okay.
And so the point of the book Obliquity is that the best way to achieve a thing is often not going directly at it, but going at it obliquely.
Oh,
So when I call this an obliquoscope, I sometimes tell people, okay, it helps you not look at the thing you're looking at, which sounds strange,
mm,
but suddenly you go, I am not just appraising it for its appearance and its surface and its so on. I'm beginning to contemplate other things around it. So the questions on this version are at the top, it says, what is this? Then it says, what is it for? How did it get here? Who uses it? What else does it do? When is it used? Who made it? What is it made of? And why does it exist? And some questions like sort of like, what is it for and why does it exist? Sometimes they're the same question.
mm.
And then sometimes they're very, very different questions. Or even if you're pointing at the same thing, it can be the same question, but suddenly it separates into very separate things indeed. So that's on the thing itself. What we made recently, so I was at a conference called Future Day, so we used these as part of the city scanning exercise. And we took, as an addition, we put on the back these four layers that you could look at, which I'll read them out because it won't come up very well. But it's based on something called Richard Buchanan's Four Orders of Design.
Mm.
So it talks about, so look at the appearance of things. So the color, the brand, the shape, all the things that sort of like that appears to the visible to the eye. And then think about the materials that they consist of. You go, so this is not a naturally occurring thing most of the time when you're using this. So this has been made of something. So what's it made of? And then it's what interactions does it create? So suddenly you look at an object, but you say, okay, so how are people using it or not using it? And how are they working with not just between themselves and a thing, but between each other as well? And then the last question is think about the systems that supports this. So suddenly you start like asking people to like peel away the layers of reality and go, okay, so what's really going on here? And it's really an abductive thinking tool. So you might not know the answers to these questions, but I bet you can probably guess. You can guess where to look. You can guess how to kind of point your research and go, huh, I don't know what sort of system supports this mobile network and so on, or how most people are paying for this over here. But that becomes a good question that I can say, needs to find this out.
Mm. So how does this approach help people thrive in the face of uncertainty?
It's a good question.
Mm.
I think what it does is, and I've been thinking about this for a talk that I did last week. So Bruno Latour gave a talk called A Cautious Prometheus, and in that referred to some other work thing from the original German or Old English etymology as a gathering. So when we use the word thing, I like to think of it as like we're not being imprecise. We're just being precise about how complex it is. We're going, a thing is happening. And I don't just mean, oh, we've got a wildlife group on the estate. You go, okay, so a thing by a wildlife group on our little estate where we live is kind of like, it's about everyone's gardens and all of the legislation that's been passed and how the council haven't adopted the roads and how nature works in amongst the gardens and the green spaces and so on. You go, it's lots of different factors composite this thing. So in the face of uncertainty, to pick up your question, if you can't see a thing, it's very hard to change a thing.
Mm.
So using the obliquoscope to start peeling apart those layers allows people to really visualize what a thing is. And once you can see a thing, and it doesn't take like experts or professional designers or whatever else it happens to be, it's kind of like once you reveal it to most people, they can point to parts of it and go, now that I know that this is doing this, why don't we change that? It becomes more obvious once you see a thing for what it really is to go, all right, I have uncertainty about what's coming next, but now that I can see the true form of it, I've got some ideas about how we might want to affect change.
I like that
So
idea.
sometimes your blind spot is right in front of you. You just have to look for it, look
Right.
at it.
I like how
Amazing just having that just the little window, just suddenly it just takes you into looking at the kind of like the webcam on top of my monitor or whatever else, or the car that's out there, which is an electric car next to a petrol car. Suddenly it just focuses me in an environment because cities, towns, villages, countryside, seaside, whatever it happens to be, are all full of lots and lots of different things. Humans have had such an effect detrimentally on the world in so many different ways, but also positively. There's so much going on any place you happen to be. So this just allows you to start taking those things around you one at a time and go, well, let's just concentrate on this for a minute or two.
I like how you framed the idea of how you can reframe uncertainty by looking in that little frame because it doesn't come across as uncertainty. It could actually be something else beyond uncertainty. Can I just ask you a question? How do you then, if you're a leader, hone the skill of zoning in? So you might not have the little contraption, but like how do you look up and actually just say, I'm going to focus on maybe a sign, a building, a physical feature like infrastructure, some structure, or even just think about the system, like how the road works, whatever it is, right? And like hone the skill of maybe like blocking out the white noise and actually like focusing on something and asking the right questions to be able to not only frame uncertainty, but to also be able to deal with whatever answers come from it.
So I think that's another good question. And I like when you use the word leader within that, I like to do this exercise with other people. And so any leader who is doing this, you could say, oh, if you take that a window or just go and look in your environment and find one particular thing, if you do that on your own, it's basically you and your perspective.
Mm.
If you are standing next to 3, 4, 5 of your team or people from different parts of a business, and you go, let's just go and look at the factory floor, the shop where our thing is sold, the kind of like the high street nearest someone's house. Let's just go and look what we see and see what's relevant for our world. In listening to the rest of your team answer that question as well and seeing what they focus on, you will get a different sense of the things that they are seeing and the connections that they make based on their experience and the questions that they might have about them. And so then in the space between all of you, you go emerges, okay, so what's really interesting here is not just my opinion, the thing I'm focusing on as a leader, but this common sense of a collective way of seeing the world. So that we can go, well, actually, when we talk to each other and we know different parts of the business and we want to achieve different things, we know there's complexities within that and uncertainty out there. But once we start talking to each other about the things that we're seeing, you find, maybe back to Bronwyn's point, kind of like you suddenly go the blind spot, going like, okay, we never mentioned this. We never mentioned this part of the customer service journey, or we never mentioned this part of the material sourcing. And yet it's everywhere. We're all spotting it in different things, day by day, week by week, in different things, but only by saying to each other what we're seeing around the place does it come to the surface.
And then do you have any case studies that you can share where you've done this exercise with like a leadership or like leadership team or leaders with a team where you've really been amazed or inspired by the results that came out of it? Because for someone, when we share these concepts and these constructs or approaches or models of thinking, it seems like a very simplistic approach, a very simple way of approaching, let's say, a problem or a situation, right? And they think, but like, how can something so simple and so obvious be so helpful and so insightful and transformative as well? So like if you have any case studies or like an instant, and maybe in the work that you've already done, like now you just said you shared that little tool of yours. I'm so sorry, I forgot the name again. Slipped my mind.
It's very hard to say. I will give it that. Calling it an obliquoscope, which let's be honest, is not a word, makes it really hard to say for everybody, including me.
But I think we'll add it in the notes so people know actually what it's called, because I think it's good for them to know that and get that into their vocab, because I think it's a great tool of framing how you look up and you scan the world and frame the world. So like, do you have any case studies where you can share where you've seen great things come out of this exercise activity?
So I can tell you one of my favorite things. And it's actually it's related to the course that we came up with it on primarily. But the same is true in kind of other settings with clients. But I like the way this story unfolds. Essentially, so on the course one year we had students from all over, the people from all over the world come. But there was I remember a conversation between a Danish designer and a designer from Brazil. And the conversation was essentially the Danish designer said, "Oh, we'll make people connect with Wi-Fi to this, and because we're imagining different futures for different things, and we can do this, and they connect with Wi-Fi, and they can use their phones and all the data and so on and so forth." And the designers from Brazil went, "Let me tell you about where I'm from in Manaus, where we're lucky if we have 2G signal, and none of this works. So we can't sort of design from that perspective down and then miss lots of people. What can we do from that perspective up?" And so then they would go around the streets looking for low-tech solutions. So because we do the course in Barcelona as well, the street is filled with so many different examples. But their emphasis became on sort of like, where can we spot examples of people using really low-tech solutions to do things? So that's one example from course. And then the two other examples from course, which are almost just like things that people have said after doing this exercise. There was one student from, again, from Brazil, came back in after a day of CT scanning. He was like, "I can't stop seeing like this." And this is sort of like, so this is almost like the point to this is it's a bit like, do you remember the Disney movie Dumbo? It's a bit like Dumbo's feather, right? So Dumbo only thinks he can fly because he's got the feather. And then he loses the feather, goes, "Well, I can't fly now." And the little mouse goes like this. It's not the feather, right? If you're going around and seeing things, this is the feather, right? This is like you don't stop being able to see if you don't have the thing. And then the final quote from the course was a student last year before. He just turned around, sort of was looking around, going, "Do you know what? I'm really enjoying my new eyes."
Oh, that's nice.
And that was so lovely.
Thank you so much for sharing it. I think I love that last quote about, "I really enjoy using my new eyes." Because I mean, we always have our mind's eye, our real eyes, but we don't actually see things in a new light. And I think this approach helps people see things I've always seen every day, in their everyday lives in a new light and see that they've been missing these opportunities around them. Especially the example about the low tech, they've been missing these examples because they have not been looking at a certain level or looking with a specific lens at
Exactly.
solving the problem or whatever this, not even a problem, but just searching for solutions actually, because sometimes it's not necessarily looking for a solution to a problem, but just finding a better way of doing something or changing a system or making it better.
Exactly this. And even if all you achieve with this is like you reveal the world more in a way that really tells how it is. It shows a thing for what it actually is rather than the kind of like the surface of something that you ignore. Even if you don't have a solution for it, even if it's just acknowledging some of the stuff that's going on in the world, that's such a powerful start.
Thank you so much, John, for your time. For those who are watching our 15-minute foreplay conversations, please continue to subscribe, share, join us for other ones. There's other conversations that we've recorded, and we'll see you next time. Bye.